In this video, traders, let's explore if market sentiment is important. Stick around. Hey traders, warm welcome to you. All right, so is market sentiment important? You might see some brokers and some news publication websites and maybe some people on social media showing this sentiment gauge. And some brokers are offering this sentiment gauge saying, hey, we've got 50% of people long, 50% short, or 90% long, 90% short. And then the sentiment indicator is often a poll done, and it come out and say, on a scale of 0 to 100, how bullish or bearish are, 0 to 10, or whatever it is. You get the idea. And so as traders, is this just entertainment, or is this something we can use to carve out more edge? I want to give you my take on it, but I don't know if I'm right on this. And this is my opinion on things. I want you to let me know in the comment section below how, if any, you use these sentiment gauges. If you agree with me, if you disagree with me. And at the end of the day, guys, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to discover potentially new ways to generate edge. We're trying to discover new ways to make more profits in the market, right? And I can say one way that I think is right, but if someone else, you guys got something else to add, then please absolutely do, because everyone's going to benefit from it. Okay, so these kind of gauges, you see them all the time. It's like, all right, extreme. So this is my take on it. I think that if you have a reading somewhere between, let's say, 30 to 70, okay, so sitting in the middle there, like about, let's imagine it was just here, I don't think there's any edge. I think if you have that scenario, you generally get, and this is not always the case, but generally speaking, as the markets move higher, the gauge kind of moves a little bit to the higher side. So as it starts moving higher, you get 50, 60, 70, and as the market's moving higher and higher and higher, the gauge tends to be what happens. So if we look at it just that way, how useful is it? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. So between that sort of middle ground, I don't think there's much edge. Again, you let me know if you find there's an edge there, please tell me. I'll definitely explore it myself. 30 to 70, it's middle ground, right? Some people are bullish, some people are bearish, as you'd expect. Two-way flow, markets rotate higher and lower. That's what I would expect. Now, okay, so if we assume that that's going to be true, what about between 0 and 30 and between 70 and 100? Where is the edge there? Now, this is where I think it gets a little more interesting. Obviously, the closer you are to 70 and the closer you are to 30, I think the edge diminishes. But as you get to the extremes, let's say you get into 90s or we get into the kind of teens, what does that tell you? It tells you the majority of people are thinking one way. Their sentiment, if the sentiment is massively skewed positive, then does that indicate that, okay, this is what is my theory on it. Again, this is why I'm kind of putting it out there, so you can say, no, I don't believe that, whatever. I think that as sentiment starts to increase, if you are bullish, you are either going to be positioned long already, or you're not going to do it. You would have already done it, right? Or you're about to do it. I don't think you're going to wait. So if I asked you and said to you, hey, are you bullish or bearish on this chart? Like, I'm very bullish on this chart. Are you positioned? Yes. Are you positioned? No. Why not? Well, I couldn't find an entry. Fine. You're probably not going to buy now after you've seen it being bullish. And so my theory is that as the sentiment starts to get to extremes, that's the majority of people already positioned. So as you come to more really extreme readings, everyone who's going to give a bullish reading here, everyone who's going to buy has already bought. Where are the other buyers going to come from? Now, I know this is very subjective and very generalized, and there are other places the buyers could come from, of course, but if you imagine it's that, where are the buyers going to come from? Everyone is positioned, and I get this as retail traders as well. I get all these kind of caveats, and there's not science behind this at all. But as you start to get more extreme, it's like, okay, who's going to, if that is a reasonable indication of the whole market participants, and if the majority of those participants are bullish, where is the buying going to come from? Who's going to then shift from bearish to bullish to be able to create that ignition? Who's going to create that kind of move? Now, obviously, a trend continues very often until we get some sort of heavy selling that stops a trend. So it doesn't mean the trend's going to stop. However, I think when the sentiment is really extreme, you've got to look for some kind of trend exhaustion or ending. My opinion on this, I think that everyone is already positioned, who's going to position. If they haven't yet, who's left to buy? So they might have, if a large hedge fund, you might be slicing up your orders, or a large mutual fund into multiple batches, and that's kind of the inflows coming in as well, and that sort of stuff causing the buying, fine. So there might be a delayed reaction to it, but once everyone's bullish, it's like, who's going to twist? Who's going to pivot? So from a kind of trader's perspective, taking the contrarian view at that point, and my opinion, again, not advice, my opinion is that contrarian view is probably where more edge lies. Similarly, if the market is getting smashed to the downside and the market's kind of pushing lower, pushing lower, pushing lower, and that reading is kind of sitting between sort of 10 or even lower than that, that kind of level is really, really negative, extreme bearish reading, market's getting slammed to the downside, who's left to sell? Now, of course, that could continue for days, maybe even more. It could continue for a long period of time because orders take time to do, overhang of stock, etc. But if everyone's shifted, everyone's transacting on the sell side, who does that not indicate that maybe there's not many people left to shift from bullish to bearish? And so what's going to create the extra move? And so rather than, let's say you're sitting in the middle there, you could potentially, as the market starts to rally, that's when the sentiment starts to pick up. You want to be on board that move. You want to be on board it before everyone else shifts. If everyone's shifted to one way or the other, that's not really the time to jump on board that sentiment because everyone's already made the move. Everyone's already bullish. Everyone's already bearish. That's fine. To me, that's a point where I start to look to be a contrarian. Like, listen, it's an extreme bearish move, and we have extreme bearish reading as expected. It's not like we have an extreme bearish move, and this is where we get some subtle differences, I think, maybe some edge. Markets move lower, heavy selling. The reading is still staying relatively stagnant, or not stagnant, relatively in the middle, kind of. Maybe it will, it almost certainly will be less than 50, but it's not in those extremes yet of the teens. Maybe it's sitting at kind of mid-20s, something like that. You're like, that's got room to move. Still some people bullish out there. 25% of people are bullish. If you look at it percentage-wise, that's a lot of people to shift. And if we've got this, it's going to not take much for them to suddenly shift to bearish. That can be, there's another leg on the trade coming. So when you have that scenario and you have a big market move and the market's sitting maybe kind of in the 30 level, that to me says, okay, we still have some place to go. I'm not going to just start fading that blindly now. And so where could that go? Where could it go based on, hey, what's the market done? What's the sentiment doing? How much room has the sentiment got to breathe? How much room has the market got to breathe? When that sentiment is slammed to the high side or downside, or 0 or 100 area, not going to be flat out there, and the market's moving as well, is there much more to go? So that's the way that I look at it. Again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm open to listen to what you guys have got to say about this. Do you use your sentiment data? Just entertaining? Do you even look at it? Or do you think there's edge there? Do you say, okay, actually, you know what, when sentiment's extreme one way or another, that's an additional filter I will use to help my positioning and look for kind of 3 or 4 day moves off an extreme exhaustion move? Or do you see sentiment not moving when price is moving and use that as a kind of continuation pattern? Let me know. Thoughts in the comment section below. Hope it's helped. Take care. See you next one. Bye-bye.